Hey everyone, I am Chris Knight, and you are watching The Real Review 3000 here with a special video today. And it's a video about a man that I truly love and dearly miss. It's about my father, and when you're watching this, it'll be November 6, 2019, which is the 3-year anniversary of his death. I will be there visiting him at the cemetery where he's buried, and I felt it was time to do this video. When it came to Father's Day, I didn't do a video. I wanted to, but I just couldn't think of what to do. I did one for my mother, and I felt bad that I didn't do one about my father, but I felt that this was more the time. I'm going to try to get through this as best as I can, but I'm going to let you know a little bit about my father. Right here is my father and I when I was very young, and as you can see, is a boy who's just truly in love with his father. My father taught me everything that I know about construction, maintenance, cooking, anything. I mean, my father did a ton of things. He was a police officer. He was a petty officer, 3rd class in the United States Navy. And he was also an accomplished baseball player in high school. So going back to high school, my father was born September 10th, 1948. And when he got to high school, he played baseball, and he was a great baseball player. He was a pitcher. Before he went to college, he was recruited by 3 major league teams to play with minor league contracts. He chose to go to college, and when he went to college, he partied. He partied a lot. He went to places, partied, served beer to people as a bartender, and did all sorts of crazy stuff, and basically flunked out of college. In fear of going to Vietnam as a draftee, knowing that that would put him in the United States Army, my father instead decided to volunteer at 17 to the United States Navy. My grandfather took him and helped him sign up. My father served from 1966 to 1970, and like I said, he was a petty officer, 3rd class. He served on the USS Providence. And I think I've mentioned this before, but he was on the Providence during the Tet Offense, or offensive as they called it. During 1968, the Providence provided gunfire support off of Vietnam during each month except for June and December. In February 1968, Providence was involved in the Tet offensive. She contributed by shelling the wall around the citadel in Hue, in the Battle of Hue. A breach in the wall was opened, allowing the United States Marine Corps to break the stalemate at Hue. My father was aboard the ship when that happened. He told me stories about how nothing could sleep, not even a mouse, because there was nothing but constant shelling. And it was a command ship, and my father was a radio man on it. He was proud of his service, but at some point after that, in 1968 or 69, somewhere around there, my father was tired of the ship. They lined up a bunch of people and asked who wanted to volunteer to go on land, and that's what my father did. He wanted off the ship. He volunteered to go on land as a radio man, and at that time, radio men were only second to the commanding officer of most targeted person. My father was on land, I think, for a few months. I don't know exactly. He never really talked about it much. But he survived, and he saw a lot of things that he just would never really fully talk about. Sometimes he'd tell me a little bit here and there. You know, he just didn't want to talk about it. But on the way home, my father was on a ship and going to reach a hatch to lift it up. The hatch weighed about 5,000 pounds. There were 3 springs that would help with the weight distribution. 2 of those springs gave way while my father's left foot was in the hatch. And in the process of trying to save his left foot, he threw out 3 spinal discs. This was when he was 19, which would have been in 1967. Or somewhere around there. Again, my father didn't talk about it much. I'm not really positive. Soon after that, he was brought back home and served till 1970. Somewhere around that time, my mother tells me that it was his first surgery, but either way, his first or his second surgery in 1980, if that was his first or second, I don't know. In 1980, he was in VA hospital to have work done, and during that time, they cut the nerve to his left foot, giving him a drop foot. You could literally take a hammer and a nail it in his left foot, and he wouldn't have felt it. My father spent most of his life in pain, and most of his life with that problem. He lived until he was 68, and from 19 or somewhere around that time to 68, he dealt with pain, his back problems, his knee problems, his foot problems. He had Agent Orange that they removed. He had over 20 surgeries on his back. He had multiple hand surgeries. He had his left pinky removed because of carpal tunnel. My father went through it all. But he was always there for me. No matter what I went through, he was always there for me. I miss him dearly, and I wanted to show you guys a few things about him. I made this for him sometime in high school or somewhere around there. I don't know. I'm going to put it up here. It's kind of hard with all the lights, but we'll go down here. Basically, this is all the pictures that I had of me, him, my mother, and just all sorts of things I got from my baby book. Things that were written, times when I was with him. And, I got this now. This is all I have. This and other photos. It's all I have to remember him of. And I dearly never understood how much I'd appreciate that later on in life. I mentioned my father is buried. He's buried in Leavenworth National Cemetery. He was cremated. Originally, he wanted to be buried at sea, and my father was insistent on it. Well, soon before that, my mother had told me she wanted me to be cremated, and she wanted to be buried with my father. Well, soon after that, my father told me he wanted to be buried at sea, and so here I was with this quandary. What do I do? My mom wants to be buried with my dad, but my dad wants to be buried at sea. The easy thing would have been, I guess, to take my mom out to sea and bury her with him, but she wanted to be buried in the cemetery that my grandfather was buried in. Luckily, my father decided to get cremated, so part of him is in Leavenworth National Cemetery. The other part right now, one part of him, is in the Pacific Ocean, because I promised my dad that I would bury him at sea. I have one more bag of his ashes, and he'll be buried in the Atlantic Ocean too, because that's where my father wanted to be. I also have, of course, this. This is this is his flag that was given to us when he died, and it sits at my mom's house right now. I went to go get it, but it's these things that remind me of him every day. I will say this. My father served in the Vietnam War, and I know that there have been many wars, and not everybody's been happy with people when they come back. But in World War I and World War II, Korea, Desert Storm, Iraqi Freedom, and even Afghanistan, a lot of these wars, when our veterans came home, they were welcomed and they were honored. Unfortunately, my dad had the honor of being in the Vietnam War. People ran from their draft. People refused to sign up, and people spit at my father, threw things at my father and other people who came back from that. And that's not how anybody should be honored. My father suffered. for over 3/4 of his life because he gave to his country. And nobody should have to deal with that. No veteran should ever have to suffer because of serving for their country. And too many of them do. The ironic thing about it was that my father would never have been drafted. His number was never called. And if he had never gone to volunteer, he would have never been called. And he would have lived a normal life, probably gone and played ball. I may never have existed. I don't know. But that's what I take away from my father. As a man who, as a boy, decided that instead of being drafted, he was going to man up and volunteer. And after all of that was said and done, he didn't have to. So, as much as this is a video about my father, this is also an early Veterans Day video. To every veteran who's ever served, be it served during wartime or during peacetime, I thank you. I thank every last one of you, whether or not you want the thanks or not. You deserve the thanks. Let me know what you think down below in the videos, or in the comments, I'm sorry. And please hit that like button. Hit the like button for my father, not for me, for my father, please. Hit the subscribe button and hit that bell so you know when we're coming out with new stuff. You know the normal stuff, the hashtag PandaSuitMary, the GoFundMe page. Please check that out. And guys, thank you very much for watching this. I really appreciate it. Have a good day.
Hey guys, thanks for checking us out. Be sure to subscribe to both channels, and make sure to check out our friends in the Fandom Minutes. You can find us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and BitChute, and you can also send us an email at sean@seanstackhousereacts.com and chrisknight@therealreview3000.com. And be sure to swing by our Teespring store to pick up some awesome merchandise.